Chapter 3. Karnic Family History. From the tender age of 7, Karl felt a pull towards the military, a calling stirred by watching the film Red Dawn alongside his father. His father often passed on war stories his father shared with him before being killed in Vietnam. They were often poignant tales of his days in the U.S. Navy, fueling the young Karl's ambitions. The Karnic lineage was steeped in military tradition. After emigrating from Germany post-World War I, the outbreak of World War II saw a rift in the family. While some returned to support Germany, others, now American citizens, pledged allegiance to the U.S. Armed Forces. It was a war where blood faced blood. Among those who had returned to fight alongside his German brethren was Karl Karnic, the very man he was proudly named after. Karl Karnic wasn't just a name in the annals of the Wehrmacht. He became a symbol of loyalty and resilience. Rising through its echelons, he eventually wore the badge of a respected general. As the fires of war consumed the landscape, General Karnic found himself and a handful of his men standing as the last line of defense on the Eastern Front. With the war tide turning against Germany, reinforcements were but a distant dream. Yet, Karl was driven not just by duty, but by a profound love for his homeland. Even with his despair of war, he decided to make a final stand to defend a village, vulnerable to the approaching Russian forces. This wasn't just any village. As Karl gazed upon the faces he aimed to protect, he saw weary eyes filled with strength. Women who had taken on roles they'd never imagined, and children, robbed of their innocence too soon, were clinging to survival. In their midst, he saw reflections of his own convictions. Despite knowing the odds, Karl was determined to show them that there were still soldiers, like him, willing to lay down their lives for their compatriots. To him, this was more than a strategic stand. It was a testament to unyielding spirit and love for one's nation. As the dust clouds signifying the Red Army's advance grew visible on the horizon, General Karnic wasted no time. The stark reality was clear. They were gravely outnumbered and their ammunition was limited. The village's scant resources added to the grim outlook. Nevertheless, with the odds stacked against them, Karnic and his men were determined to defend the village to their last breath. With a deep sense of belief, General Karnic quickly strategized, banking heavily on their stock of 8mm rounds for the Mauser K98 rifles. While the MG-42 machine gun, known as Hitler's buzzsaw, could unleash a hellfire of bullets, its voracious appetite for ammunition meant it would be spent quickly. And with a meager 800 rounds available, its firepower would be short-lived. Throughout his military career, General Karnic had been an advocate for precision shooting over mere spraying of bullets. He'd often argued,
"One well-placed shot is worth more than 10 wasted."
And in training sessions, he drilled this philosophy into his men, emphasizing the importance of being marksmen rather than just trigger pullers. Now, as the enemy approached, he hoped that this rigorous training would pay off. Gathering his men, Karnic said, "Today, every bullet must count. Our strength lies not in the number of rounds we have, but in the accuracy of our shots. Remember what we've trained for." The area seemed almost electrified as the soldiers prepared for the inevitable onslaught, leaning on the values and skills General Karnic had instilled in them. The village sat like a crown atop the hill, with slopes providing a natural defense. As General Karnic observed from his vantage point, the Russian forces approached in an unruly manner, reminiscent of a swarm of ants descending upon a sugar cube. There was no finesse, no strategy, just the weight of numbers. Their belief was that sheer volume could steamroll any defense. But the general and his men had a surprise in store. The MG-42 roared to life, its rapid fire mowing down wave after wave of the advancing forces. Yet, the machine gun's wrath was short-lived. And even as hundreds fell, they were rapidly replaced by fresh troops, seemingly undeterred, though now moving with a hint of caution. However, it was the Mauser K98 in the hands of General Karnic's men that turned the tide. Each of his 27 soldiers, hardened by the crucible of war and honed by rigorous training, became the embodiment of efficiency. Every pull of the trigger sent a Russian soldier to the ground. Unlike the indiscriminate hail of a machine gun, these rifles spoke a language of precision. Each shot carried an unspoken message to the enemy. You could be next. The psychological impact was brutal. The Red Army, expecting an easy conquest, now faced a daunting challenge. The ranks started showing hesitation. When confronting a machine gun, soldiers could attribute their comrades' fall to random stray bullets. But when faced with the consistent deadly accuracy of the Mausers, each soldier couldn't help but feel he might be the next target in a marksman's sights. The battle's dynamic shifted. The once chaotic rush of the Red Army was now a cautious advance, punctuated by the deliberate cracks of the German rifles, each echo signaling the fall of another soldier. The Germans, heavily outnumbered yet undeterred, showcased the power of skill over numbers. Karl's soldiers gave them hell, delivering a formidable resistance. But the relentless tide of the Red Army continued to inch closer, swallowing the land in a sea of devastation. With every Russian soldier felled by the K-98 Mauser rifle, another seemingly sprouted in his place. The efficiency of the German marksmen was extraordinary, but even 5 well-placed rounds were quickly spent against the inexhaustible enemy forces. Each casualty amongst his own men etched a painful mark on Karl's soul. He witnessed young soldiers, men who had followed him without question, falling one by one within the fray, and with each fallen warrior, a piece of him silently shattered. As the battle, which appeared eternal in its fury, waged on, General Karnic was faced with a daunting decision. He had managed to buy precious time for the last inhabitants of the village to flee towards the American front.
Forward, men!
Their safety, a glimmer of solace in the anguish, provided him with a semblance of purpose. With a heavy heart, Karl issued his next command, a directive meant to preserve the lives of the few men he still had left. He instructed them to follow the villagers' path and to surrender, but only to the Americans. His orders were met with steadfast refusal. These soldiers, bound by loyalty and honor, had no intention of abandoning their general. Karl, knowing their staunch actions, addressed them with a voice that quivered with emotion. "You will heed this command," Karl spoke firmly, yet his eyes betrayed a softer plea.
You will heed this command. It is not merely an order, but my final request. My ask is not rooted in a desire to preserve your lives, but to safeguard those of our innocent countrymen. If the Russians breach our lines, it will be your duty to slow them, to provide every possible moment for our people to find safety. Our nation may have crumbled, but we remain its steadfast guardians. Ick your duty. Pay homage to those who have bled before you and those who will.
Karl's words, laced with solemn acceptance of the inevitable, flowed across the remnants of his contingent. His eyes, peering into the distance, embraced the reality that he, too, would soon be counted among the fallen. With the reality of the situation setting in, General Karl Karnic displayed unparalleled leadership, ensuring that those who had even a remote chance of surviving were directed towards safety. With a stoic demeanor, he selected the men he believed could endure the arduous trek to the American front. He looked around, realizing that all that remained were those too grievously injured to move. Their spirits remained undeterred, for even in their weakened states, they clung onto their weapons, ready to fight to their last breath. Amongst the flurry of hurried preparations and soft goodbyes, Karl beckoned his trusted sergeant, a man who had been at his side through countless battles and skirmishes. The weight of the moment was clear in both their eyes, for they knew this could very well be their last conversation. "I have one final request," Karl whispered, handing over a sealed envelope and his service tag. "My wife is expecting our child any day now. Ensure this reaches him."
Sir,
The sergeant, his eyes glistening with unshed tears, took the items with reverence, understanding the gravity of the responsibility he was being entrusted with. He also recognized that Karl was choosing to remain, making the ultimate sacrifice alongside the brave men still holding the line. "I will see to it, sir," the sergeant promised. He hesitated for a moment, then extended his hand. The two men gripped each other firmly, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forged in the fire's war. "Good luck, sir," the sergeant said, his voice thick with emotion. Karl nodded, watching as his men began their desperate journey to safety. Standing tall among the devastation, he prepared for the final stand, knowing he couldn't ask of his men what he himself wasn't prepared to give. Everything. The landscape, stained with the tumult of battle, slowly receded as the sergeant and his group of survivors made their way towards American lines. Each step they took was made possible with the knowledge of the sacrifice being made behind them. The distant rumbles of war were a constant reminder. Even as they distanced themselves, the unmistakable sound of the Mausers echoed, a testament to the steadfast resistance of General Karnic and his men. Every shot fired was a symbol of defiance, of unyielding spirit, of honor in the face of overwhelming odds. With every report of the rifles, the sergeant couldn't help but envision General Karnic standing tall, leading his remaining men in their final moments. He imagined the general's unflinching gaze, his unwavering hand, and his undying commitment to the cause and the protection of his countrymen. As minutes turned into half an hour, the cracks of the Mausers began to thin out. Yet, each shot felt triumphant, as if it were a loud proclamation of the indomitable spirit of the soldiers holding the line. The sergeant took solace in knowing that for every shot heard, there was likely one fewer pursuer on their trail. As the sounds faded, an overwhelming sense of gratitude, sorrow, and pride filled the hearts of the survivors. The weight of their survival was tethered to the sacrifice of those they had left behind, and the story of General Karl Eugene Karnic and his brave men would be one they would carry with them forever.